Well, Sasaki has signed, and evidently you all had some thoughts about the podcast.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you, please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. Probably the best way to get hold of me is to put the comments right down here on the YouTube page. Or if you need to, contact me via the Instagrams at Locked On. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast there. Every 14 weeks, I go to Blue Sky where I'm at Sully Baseball there. I don't know if that's going to work, but what are you going to do? And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel has made the NFL playoffs more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The other day I did the Sasaki signing. I did a preview of the Sasaki signing. Then I did the Sasaki signing, and now I'm doing a little bit of the aftermath. I did the preview where I broke down why he could go to the Dodgers, why he could go to the Padres, why he could go to the Blue Jays. Maybe part of me, and I'm not a Dodger hater. I rooted for the Dodgers in the World Series this year, but maybe part of me was being hopeful he signed with San Diego or Toronto because I just thought that would be more interesting. Especially because, the Blue Jays are a team that desperately needs to have something positive happen because it could cost them their franchise player in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And as the Deep Shallow wrote in the comments section, if the Blue Jays lose Vladdy, it's an all-time fumble. Well, it would be a horrific fumble for Toronto. It wouldn't be the level of the Angels blowing it with Shohei Ohtani, and they blew it in every level. But if they don't sign Vladdy Guerrero Jr. to a long-term deal this year, they're going to have to trade him because you can't do what happened in Anaheim, which is to let this generational superstar just walk. But I found it really. I would be just surreal. But the reason I did that episode was to give my prediction and my thoughts of it before it actually happened. So you wouldn't just think that I was someone coming on and not putting my predictions out there. I put my predictions out there. I put my thoughts out there. And if I'm wrong, and I was wrong with my prediction of him going to San Diego, but I mapped out why it would make sense for him to go to Los Angeles. There was a reasonable reason for him to go to any one of the places, but yeah, in the end, it made sense for him to go to LA. I've been wrong a bunch of times last year. I was wrong about the Ohtani interpreter thing. I was wrong about my thoughts of the Mets because I didn't think they should have. I thought they should have sold at the deadline, but I try to do that so I don't look like a Monday morning quarterback. So naturally, Bob Coulton 2449 says, you are the typical Monday morning quarterback. Okay, Bob. I can't even, I honestly can't even guess what that would mean. Although later he's the same dude says there was no suspense. We all know he signed with the Dodgers except you. So that means I'm not a Monday morning quarterback. I don't know. You know what? You can't please everyone. And when you're a Bob Coulton out there who wants, if you're going to fling arrows at me, please, I'm used to that, but pick the arrow. But a lot of people wrote in about the podcast and my thoughts on it. And of course, his signing with Los Angeles. Coconut Nuts 24/7. What a great name that is. Says If healthy, even Dave Roberts, misspelled there, goofy decisions can't stop this juggernaut from an all-time wins total. I'll take the Dodgers versus the field. Yeah, I mean they're going to be wonderful this year. Now they've had 100-win seasons recently and fallen short. And remember, they lost the San Diego lost 2-0 on 2 solo home runs in Game 5, and the bullpen game shut down the Padres offense in Game 4. If that Game 5, the Padres found the bats, remember they were able to score at will in Games 1, 2, and 3. If they just had an okay offensive showing in Game 5 and moved on, these moves would have been the moves of a desperate franchise desperately trying to win a non-COVID title. Things can just bounce this way or another. But that means that, yes, right now, Los Angeles looks like the can't-miss pick. But things can happen. In many ways, the expanded playoffs are the great equalizer. If the Padres have a good week, if the Mets, if the Phillies, if Atlanta, if whichever team comes out of the Central has a good week or pulls off what Arizona did a couple of years ago and have a pair of good weeks, then a great juggernaut team can fall flat on its face. But the Dodgers are trying to build something, as I said yesterday, they're trying to build a championship team that can do that thing that has only happened once in the National League in the last 100 years, which is back-to-back titles. And if they win back-to-back titles, then they can then they can look back and say, okay, we have given the Dodgers everything. In a decade and a half, this management has taken it from the McCourt fiasco to a potential where a team that you bet against the field. And as Malcolm Malone, is that how I'm pronouncing it? All the players that the Dodgers have paid big contracts to had opportunities to make the same money or even more with other teams. Players are choosing the Dodgers. In fact, I'm going to read. There's a little more to that comment. I couldn't fit it all onto the banner there. It says Malcolm Malone says, I think one thing people overlook about the Dodgers is how many good decisions they made in the past few years. They spent a bunch of money, but they made really good decisions recently, except for the Trevor Bauer sign. That was a mistake, kind of an obvious mistake. But I don't think it's because of winning. The Yankees made the World Series too. Sasaki and Soto did not choose the Yankees. I think the Dodgers put together the best situation for players to be in. Yeah, they have. Things can turn. Teams that look like the ideal franchise can turn on their head. But Los Angeles is doing something that I think is similar to what Atlanta did in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was harder to do it with Atlanta because you didn't have the expanded playoffs. But LA has been consistently year in and year out, if not the best team in the National League, then one of the best teams in the National League. And they're doing it where it's not just buying superstars. They do buy superstars, but they also have a good farm system. They also have good analytics, and they also play good, sound, fundamental baseball. This does kind of remind me a little bit of the two great eras of Steinbrenner's Yankeedom. People love to look at the fact that he signed big free agents or brought in big time contracts. Signing Catfish Hunter, signing Reggie Jackson, signing Rich Gossage, eventually signing Dave Winfield. And then later, they brought in big, huge players. They brought in the Clemenses, and they brought in the Jimmy Keys, and they brought in the Mike Mussinas of the world. And they were also able to develop players and spend their money to keep them. That's true. But it was also a lot of the other work. It was the groundwork that Gabe Paul did in the 70s and the groundwork that Buck Showalter and Stick Michael did to create the foundation of a team that adding superstars to a solid team put them over the top, as opposed to just going out and trying to grab free agents and superstars and add them to an organization that's dysfunctional. That's a big difference. And that is something that LA does, I think, wonderfully. and they may not be done. As Let the Right one in says, mark my words, Tanner Scott signs with the Dodgers. They'll probably get Santander too. Consider your words marked. There are good players still out there right now. Flaherty's still out there. Santander is still out there. Tanner Scott's still out there. Pete Alonso is still out there. There are good players to be signed. And lest we forget, pretty soon we'll be in the final third of January. And pitchers and catchers are going to report in less than a month. And I think a lot of people saw what happened with Blake Snell and Montgomery and some of the other people is we better sign with a team. This whole showing up to spring training late, that's not going to work. So, if you're Flaherty, Tanner Scott, take a look what your best offer is and consider it right now. I got a couple other quick, the last couple of thoughts on Sasaki. Blizzorak, I don't know, is that how you pronounce it? Says, from Sasaki's perspective, which had to take into account non-strictly baseball reasons, why the Padres or the Dodgers, the answer is there really isn't much. And, you know what? I guess you're right. But you know me, I'm a Monday morning quarterback, and I don't even put my stuff out there. By the way, I had to also got some nice notices regarding the episode we did on Bob Uecker. Aloha Uehara says, if you want to treat, dial this up on YouTube. A ABC game on the 13th of July, 1979. Yankees Angels with Jackson, Palmer, and Cosell. Uecker shows up in the second inning. And he goes on to say that Uecker manages to get chuckles out of Howard Cosell, and it's great to hear him kind of in his prime calling the national game. Yeah, I love doing that, by the way. And I'm gonna do some more of that on the show because I do love listening to games, old television broadcasts, old radio broadcasts on YouTube. Sometimes when I'm driving, I have a game on. And some of them are just random games. And hearing some of the old announcers doing their thing, it's fantastic. So I may give a couple recommendations. Oh, by the way, one more from Marcus N says, hi, I come from Austria and Europe, and I have to ask for my son. He's a Chicago White Sox fan. What do you think the season will be for the White Sox? Wow. First of all, Marcus, I have to say you are either the best or the worst parent. I can't figure it out. You're raising your child as a White Sox fan as they're coming off of a 121 loss season. How do I think they'll be for this season? I think they'll be better. I think they'll win more than 41 games. But do you know what? Here's what I'm all in for you, Marcus. Why I dig your son. Your son's picking the worst team. If you're in Austria, unless you move to Austria from the south side of Chicago, of all the teams, why pick the White Sox? And do you know what I think, Marcus? I think it's badass that your son's a White Sox fan. Say, give me the worst team in the history of baseball. Give me the worst team in the history of the game. And that's the team I'm going to root for. You got a new manager. It's not going to get worse than last year. It's almost impossible to be worse. They're probably going to bring up a lot of young players and roll the dice. And here's the deal. When you're this bad, it means you're going to draft a lot of players. It means you're going to give a lot of minor leaguers a chance to cut their teeth in the major leagues. As recently as 2020, the White Sox looked like they were putting together something really terrific. And it didn't work. It just didn't work. The Braves did the same thing in the early 2010s. It looked like they were putting together a team that was going to be fantastic for a long period of time. It didn't work. They blew it up. And by the end of the decade, they were an elite team again. And by 2021, the year the White Sox last won a division title, they were the World Series champs. You know what? I think it'll be better. And it's going to be good for your kid to be rooting for a team that's coming off of one of the worst team in the history of modern Major League Baseball. because when they get good again, your son could pound his chest and say, yeah, I rooted for them when everyone else turned their backs to them. That builds character. So do you know what? I think you're a good dad, and I think they're going to be better. And I think they'll be a better team before you know it. But of course, will they be playing in Chicago or will they be playing elsewhere? And one of the elsewheres is going to be the topic of the second segment of this show. Let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. And FanDuel app is really easy to navigate, and they get the variety of bets to keep each game interesting. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No more waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on the Chiefs to do what you're expecting to do, like they won on Saturday, or some extra excitement like what happened with Washington and Detroit, do you know what? FanDuel has you covered. And do you know what? I don't even follow the NFL. I knew the matchup I wanted. I wanted the Lions and I wanted the Bills. I figured the Lions #1 seed. There you go. Next thing you know, they lost to the Commanders, who I had to remind myself exist. So there you go. So we'll see tomorrow to see if the Bills are going to be knocked out. That would stink. Just visit FanDuel.com to join. No offense to any Baltimore fans out there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. You know, there have been a lot of rumors about the White Sox that our new buddy out in Austria, they're rooting for. They want a new stadium. They didn't build the right stadium. They had a chance to build a Camden Yards stadium and lead the way in the stadium revolution. They didn't do that. And they built what used to be called New Comiskey Park. And it's guaranteed rate field. Is that its title? I lose track. If you change your name of your stadium twice, I don't have to remember what it is, because then it's just fluid. It's just fluid. And the stadium just, it never was the hit that they were hoping it would be. And all the other teams that build, cool old-timey stadiums just lap the White Sox. And now the White Sox want to build a downtown stadium, but the Bears also want a downtown stadium, which of course leads to the discussion, well, are you going to build a baseball stadium and a football stadium in downtown Chicago? And I talked about this topic in April, and I bring this up every once in a while. The idea of a multi-purpose ballpark has to be brought back, and it's raising its ugly head big time right now. And with the White Sox situation and the Bears, build a stadium where they both can play in, and you can come up with an architectural design that isn't just a concrete donut. The reason why people shy away from multi-purpose stadiums is like, oh, they were all cookie cutter parks. Yes, they were in the 60s and 70s. That's been a while. Those stadiums were built before I was born, and I'm about to turn 53. You understand what I'm saying? There's been advances in our architecture. And no, it might not be an old-timey Camden Yards stadium, but maybe it'll be something new. That's what they should be trying to build in Chicago, especially if they're going to be using public money. Now, the fact that we're not having multi-purpose stadiums built anymore is one of the things that's putting us in this terrible situation where they can't have an expansion until they figure out Oakland and Tampa Bay. Oakland, of course, the Fishers are a bunch of scam artists. They're liars. They're in Sacramento. It's an absolute travesty why they're there. We all know that. We've covered that. I don't really blame the Rays management that the top of Tropicana Field was torn open like a sardine can, but they're going to play in a minor league ballpark, and now they want to have repairs done to Tropicana Field because the new stadium they want to build is probably not going to happen. And by the way, the stadium in Las Vegas, is supposed to break ground in the first quarter of 2025. I know we've just started this year, but do you know what? We're nearing the end of January. The first quarter is March. Does anybody on the planet Earth think they're going to be breaking ground of a new stadium in Las Vegas in the first quarter? Of course not. But there's no other place to put a team. Omaha is a possible place because of where they play the College World Series. I had brought up the Louisiana Superdome, but someone pointed out to me, and I hadn't realized this, that they did a renovation to the Louisiana Superdome where it can no longer be reconfigured for baseball. And so you have situations where it's like you don't want to see a team move. I never want to see a team move. In a situation with the Rays, if they can't play in Tropicana Field and they can't play anywhere else in Tampa Bay, they need a new stadium to play, and they probably won't have one for the next 3 or 4 years. And so you got two teams playing in minor league parks. And if there were stadiums out there that were built that could be multi-purpose stadiums, maybe they could have a landing spot, even if it's a temporary landing spot, like when the Rockies expanded into Mile High Stadium, where the Denver Broncos used to play. It was kind of ham-fistedly converted into a baseball stadium. That's where the Denver Zephyrs played in the minor leagues, and for the first few years they played there while they built Coors Field. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. And now I'm going to bring up something in Nashville. Nashville is the ideal spot for a Major League Baseball franchise for expansion. Great sports base. Fans who have roots in the city. They've shown they can support their teams, and a lot of corporate money is in Tennessee. So all these things, and there's a great region around them that they can pull from other smaller cities like Memphis and the like. But do you know what? They're building a stadium there for the Titans. The Titans are currently playing in something called Nissan Stadium, named after Bill Nissan, famous Tennessean. Why isn't it Davy Crockett Stadium? I heard he was born on a mountaintop in Tennessee. But the Tennessee Titans are going to have a brand new Nissan Stadium at a cost of $2.1 billion. 1.26 of it is subsidized by the good people of Tennessee. The Titans are putting in $840 million. $500 million is coming from the state of Tennessee. And then there's $760 million in revenue bonds and all this other stuff that's going on for a stadium just for the Titans. Now, I think that's absurd. If they're spending all this money, of which the majority of it is not coming from the Titans, and you're building a stadium, a new palace for Tennessee sports, for Nashville sports, then that stadium must be multi-purpose. That must be a place where at least it can be configured to be a stadium for a team, even an expansion team, and believe me, I don't want a team to move. I don't want a team to move from their fan base, but if it happens that there's no solution in Central Florida, or if it happens that there's no solution in Las Vegas, which I do not believe there will be, at least not for the A's, to have them potentially move. Now, currently the Nashville Sounds, the minor league team, which is currently the AAA affiliate of the Milwaukee Brewers, play in it's called First Horizon Bank Park. It used to be called First Tennessee Bank Park. I went to a game there in 2018. Good, solid minor league stadium, 10,000 seats, but you'd have to do a lot of weird configuration to make it a 30,000 seat stadium. While a stadium that's going to cost more than $2 billion is being built primarily with public money. Now, I am not going to get political on this show, but on this instance, I'm kind of tacking to the right, aren't I? Isn't that a right-wing point of view to say no public money, no taxpayer money for this, no taxpayer money for that? Look at this. See that? That's a penny. That's more than should be spent on any stadium. Public money should not be spent on a private billionaire's palace. If they want to build, if the Titans want to raise the money and get the investors to do that, fine, go to town. But it shouldn't be taxpayers subsidizing it. And at least $500 million is being spent on that. And if that's the case, and the Titans are putting in less than half of the cost of this, then do you know what? Make it multi-purpose, because most of the days of the year it's going to sit dark. And why should you have one publicly funded stadium sitting next to another publicly funded stadium where one's dark and the other's in use, and there most days neither of them are in use? That's insane. All because you didn't like the cookie cutter parks, or we really liked Camden Yards? That's really worth what would be, if you're going to build a baseball stadium and a football stadium in Tennessee, that's really worth $4 billion. Or if you're going to build a stadium for the Bears or for the White Sox, that's probably going to be $5-6 billion in Chicago. Is that a good use of public money? The answer is no. This new multi-billion-dollar park in Tennessee should be multi-purpose, because that way, when it's done being built, then they can look up and say, hey, you want to put an expansion team here? You could do it now. If the Rays have, if all the options have run out for the Rays or for the White Sox, I don't want the White Sox to move. I don't want the Rays to move for them, but the Rays may have to move. Or the A's, for that matter. Believe me, I didn't want the A's to move from the East Bay. But if they have to move, hey, here's Tennessee. Or if they do manage to solve the Rays, they do manage to solve the A's, and they expand by 2 teams, which they're almost definitely going to do, because it's been more than a quarter of a century since we've had an expansion in baseball, then you put them in Tennessee, where there's already a decent stadium. It's insane that they're going to spend more than $1 billion and not have it be able to be configured for baseball and make it worthwhile. Absolutely insane. But hey, there you go. They need to be worrying about their money. And speaking about worrying about money, let's hear from our good friends over at Rocket Money. Maybe the city of Nashville should be using Rocket Money to be putting away some extra money. And maybe the city of Nashville has subscriptions that they forgot about that they were paying for twice. We've all had subscriptions like that. Maybe the city of Nashville has that, and they can put aside enough money to maybe build a new stadium. What's Rocket Money? It's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users who have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscription. That's the same amount of money the people of Tennessee are putting into that stadium. That'll be used 20 times a year. Saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. I've used it when I found out that certain, let's just call them movie watching apps, had doubled up. Guess what? Boom, boom, and boom. No longer paying for it. Plus, with the goals features, I've been able to automatically set aside money for the future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, well, let's wrap up the show here. Let's just do a little preview for the week. Tomorrow, I have a show that I was originally going to drop last week, but I decided to do it on Monday, the 20th, which is about Mike Trout. It's about first impressions and how I'm going to try to not, as we go forward this year, not write off people who disagree with me as just being dumb. It's hard to do sometimes. And then later, I'm going to do a show where I show I'm not a Monday morning quarterback, because I'm going to do part 1 before the Hall of Fame announcements, which is going to be taking place on Tuesday. And parts 2 and 3 are going to be afterwards. Obviously, Ichiro Suzuki is about to become a Hall of Famer, but who's going to join him? We're going to find out for sure. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But if you want to contact me, just put your thoughts right here in the comment section of the YouTubes. Answering your YouTube questions, saluting a White Sox fan out there and saying, come on, folks, let's make multi-purpose stadiums work. This has been Locked On MLB for the 19th day of January 2025. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.